Okay, this is a quick video about some art from early Christianity, and this is the painting by El Greco of the Pentecost. And so El Greco, he had some pretty interesting style. All right, it's from 1596, and there's another painting of that same subject, even better. This one is by Jean Resto. 50 days after Easter, the flame sort of signifies the ability to speak in tongues in different languages, and the apostles were sent out to preach and teach others. Okay, Mary's in the center, all calm. She knows what's going on. And in a sense, like I said, this kind of reminds me of the vegan diet. Go out and teach others about the vegan diet. But it's easier to get people to accept Christianity than it is to get them to accept a low-fat vegan diet. Okay, here's the Seven Sacraments of the Catholic Church by Rogier van der Weyden. Now, him and Botticelli are the two best artists in the 1400s. And it's just beautiful. And it also shows that it puts a structure to life. Things that everyone can relate to. And I actually think it's a great way to unify a community. After Mass, they go out for lunch on a feast day or whatever, on All Saints Day. It provides a good thing for society, I used to, hope I'd see my friends at church when I was young and I would go. I don't think Catholic priesthood could fix itself until they allowed married men to be priests. And I don't think there's not as big a difference. Oh, how did I end up on this page? This was sort of like a vision of the church. This comes from this German artist, Caspar David Friedrich. And he would do a lot of times what is called the Rückenfiguur, which just means that you show the person from their back with the idea that then the person envisions their own self in the picture. And this was some of these young Christians' view of a future church idea, organized church, if you will. All right, now here's more of the typical stuff. And this was St. Peter preaching in the catacombs of the early Christians in Rome. And the point I would make from this is the early Christians, and the modern day Christians in general, they are the poor people, okay? Friedrich Nietzsche said, he had contempt for Christianity. He's like, why would a superior person like me want a religion of inferior people? He said Christianity is a religion of slaves. He had contempt for it, and so there's other people too, like, the commies, like, they would say, why would anybody want a religion where you turn the other cheek? If somebody, slaps us, we're going to come after them and all kinds of things. Okay, so anyways, this is St. Peter preaching in the catacombs. And St. Peter's also featured in the book Quo Vadis. I'm going to show a little bit more about that here in just a moment. It's one of the greatest novels of all time. This is just a painting, Exaltation of the Cross. I show it here just because it's beautiful. I mean, the Christian art, it's just beautiful. If you like art, and I love art, man, it's just the best. Okay, so here's a famous painting of the conversion of Saul on the road to Damascus. He sees the light. And there's a lot of great songs that go with this. My favorite is I Saw the Light by Hank Williams Sr. And that's another thing I love about Christianity. I mean, it's really the best painting, the best sculpture, the best music in the world. If I'm in the car, usually I always want to listen to audiobook, but sometimes I'm stuck in the car and the CD player is broken, I'll listen to, these religious channels are my favorite ones. I don't like any of the beat music, and most of the rock, it's vulgar and noisy. I don't like it, even though, when I was younger, I liked stuff that would help me work out, or I'd like stuff, if I was in love with a girl or something, to think about her or something, but, it really doesn't do much for me, that kind of music. All right, here's St. Paul then preaching, and he preached in Athens to the Greeks at the Areopagus, by the hill, the city on a hill, Athens. And the New Testament's written in Greek, okay? The Greeks had a lot of influence on the New Testament there, and the Greek philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, etc., had a big influence. Okay, but now we're getting sort of the hard stuff. In early Rome, first of all, the other Romans had to give allegiance to the emperor, that the emperor was a god. Most tyrants want to call themselves a god, okay? And if you get rid of anything above them, then they can call themselves a god. Well, anyways, Nero wanted some more space in Rome where he could build some new buildings that he wanted, including a big statue of himself and whatnot. So he started a fire. This is in 64 AD, and burned down a large part of Rome. I forget the percentage, but it was a huge percent of Rome he burned down for his new buildings that he wanted. And then, of course, he blamed it on the Christians. Oh, this is the movie Quo Vadis. Here's the picture of Nero. Nero fiddled while Rome burns. So St. Peter and St. Paul were both alive, and they're both featured in the book. The book is an incredible psychological dialogue. That's what's so great about it. And like I said, it's kind of like Schopenhauer's description of what makes a great novel is a great sense of interiority, where you hear the characters almost thinking out loud and they're speaking and how it reflects their thoughts. And it's interesting because you would see how would you consider it and what can you learn from them. Versus the modern lousy movies that are made for retards with just a lot of noise and action and special effects rather than interiority, thinking in the mind. You know, he said in a great novel, not much happens. There's not much action and stuff. There's all these relationships between the people and the conversations and a few events. So here was Nero after he burned down a huge part of Rome. He then, made buildings for himself and he made a statue of himself. Okay, and is it just me or does this remind us a lot of Hawaii? Things are open up down south and going to create a chaos for all the proles like us. And then meanwhile, the rich, billionaire perverts, they're going to have their own nice place in Hawaii to hide away from all of it. Lucky for them. Okay, and then just to give you a sense of Nero, what a jerk Nero was. Not only was he capricious and mean and dishonest, and he did what he did to the Christians. I'm not even done showing you the paintings of that. This is what he did to his own mother. He sent her out on a collapsible boat that collapsed. And then her servant, wanted to be saved, and she saw another boat, so she started yelling out that she was Agrippina, Nero's mother. And the men on the boat were ordered by Nero to go after her and bump her off with the oars. And then Agrippina briefly escaped from this collapsible boat, but not for long. I'm just showing you that's how sick and crazy Rome was. And it just to get a sense of what really the early Christians went through. It's almost beyond belief for us modern people. Nero took the Christians and he would use them as torches and burn them as torches at night, okay, besides feeding them to the lions. All right, and this is the kind of society you get when the ruler has total power. You want there to be checks and balances on a ruler. Otherwise, they just declare themselves a god and they treat all the people like farm animals or less than farm animals. It's very common that aristocrats and rulers with total power just consider the regular people, the proles, as, low-life vermin, lower than farm animals. Okay, so this is kind of where Christianity comes from. Christianity is the friend of the poor. Think about it, why it's a friend of the poor. Because it basically says you are equal to Nero, to anyone in the eyes of God. Well, that's a big compliment to the poor person. It also says your life is meaning. You're not just a vermin farm animal that the ruler can burn as a torch, okay? In a society where the ruler has total power, they can do whatever they want to you. They can take your children and throw them in their bed. They can do whatever they want. And it seems to me like Americans, they're so stupid. They don't understand. I mean, Europeans, they've seen all kinds of tyranny and they know it. Whereas the Americans don't know history. And it makes me sad because I think these types of things are going to happen again in America if Americans don't wake up and realize, they have a constitution that protects them, but they're so ignorant of it that, the tyrannical people are trying to change it, okay? All right, now here's other things that Nero did. He'd have the Christian martyrs, like fed to the lions in the Colosseum. Here's people being burned like torches on crosses, okay? Not very nice. Here's just a painting of it afterwards, kind of gruesome, after the slaughter of the Christians in the Colosseum, and the people are all going home now after the show. This is just how Rome was. Rome was just brutal and evil. So here's Nero, of course, looking at some poor dead, Christian lady. And this has echoes of what happened in the book Quo Vadis. But the book Quo Vadis, trust me, it's one of the most magnificent novels you'll ever read in your life. I like the audiobook version of it. It's kind of long, okay, but what a psychological drama it is. It's fantastic. Okay, I'd probably rank that at about number 4 all-time book. So first best book ever is going to be Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Second best book ever would be Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Third best, Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Fourth best, Quo Vadis by Henry Sienkiewicz. Okay, and then number 5 after that, I'd say Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. Okay, so not the most accurate, but still psychologically, it's great. Okay, so anyways, here's Christ giving the keys to heaven to St. Peter, and that's part of the basis of the Catholic Church, and its continuity with Christ. And that's why if you're deep in history, according to Cardinal John Henry Newman, you'll be a Catholic. But the Catholic Church, obviously, I'm the first to acknowledge it is messed up right now. The current Pope is the Antichrist. He's the worst, the absolute worst, the worst Pope of all time. So here's St. Peter heals the sick. As he walks by, those that couldn't stand previously, they now stand up and they're a lot healthier, just walking by with his shadow, okay? You learn the vegan, low-fat vegan diet. He's curing all these people that previously were hopeless. Okay, this one's by Masaccio. Of course, I'm showing you these nice pictures of St. Peter. I'm not going to show you the one where he denied Christ 3 times before the rooster crowed. All right, now here's a painting that's from Quo Vadis. Quo Vadis means where are you going? So, and this one he says, Lord, where are you going? And it was a vision St. Peter had that basically he saw Christ returning to let's say to Rome, going back to Rome because he said, Peter, you have not done your job. You refused to do your duty, so I'm going back to Rome to be crucified again. And the gist of it was Nero was persecuting the Christians, and many of them had lost their lives as martyrs, and Peter had decided to flee Rome. Okay? And then when he's had the vision of Christ coming back to be crucified again because he was wimping out, he went back to Rome, and he did end up getting crucified. Quo Vadis, whither art thou going? So I'm going to get you to ask the question about your own life. Where are you going with your own life? You only got so much time. There's not much you can do. You got 8 hours a day. You probably got to work. You got 8 hours a day. You're asleep. And then you got another 8 hours. And really, a lot of times with commuting and stuff, it's like 6 hours a day to do something good with your life. You got to, put some time into helping your family and whoever else is important to you. But then you got a little bit of time left. And that's sort of your free, controlled part of your life. What are you going to do with it? For me, I've decided to do this nutrition stuff. And I love all this Christian art stuff. And I also think, what does religion mean? It means religare, legare, to tie together, to ligate, to tie together, to unify a population. Okay, and like I said, when I was a young guy, the population was a lot more unified. One nation under God. That was good with our Pledge of Allegiance, contrasting us from Soviet Russia. And I almost think the so-called fall of the Soviet, when was that, like around 1989 or something, was partly fake, a way to just take the pressure off of emphasizing freedom and God in America and let America sort of fall asleep and be de-Christianized and weakened and, brainwash people with all these other slogans. We used to also say no hyphenated Americans, out of many one. All of that was good for us. So anyways, my time will come. I'm not scared of diseases. Now I know these diseases pretty well. I'm pretty confident I can prevent these diseases, but nothing you can do. Big Pharma comes after you, or whatever. The cow, moon. Okay, East-isms. So hopefully that won't happen. And here's the Bible. And one thing about the Bible is the Bible wasn't even codified until like in the 300s after Constantine. It was hundreds and hundreds of years later after the beginning of Christianity. And so that's why I say Luther's argument, we only go by the Bible and not by any of the traditions of the church is bogus, because the church had been around for hundreds of years before Luther came along. But there are some things I do like about Protestants. They do read the Bible more than the Catholics do, but Catholics almost is a religion. It welcomes, every retarded idiot moron is happy to be a Catholic, and you don't need to read. That's one of the reasons why the Catholics were so great at art. They just had paintings all over the walls in their churches, and you could just teach everybody, looking at the stained glass window, looking at the paintings, looking at the sculptures, all the history of the church. Walk around the outside of a cathedral. Here's this from, the life of St. Peter. Here's this from the life of, St. Matthew. Here's this from, all the rest of them. So that was a good thing, and that's a great way to learn from pictures, okay? And if you look at some of those earlier churches, like Giotto, Masaccio, there's like a big comic book, one painting after another, the stories and the lives of Jesus and the saints and the others. So here's a painting of the Bible by Vincent van Gogh. But other good things about Protestants. They're pretty good with music. Like look at Luther, and he was a musician himself. Our God is a mighty fortress, and then he encouraged music, and that led to Bach and Handel, the great composers, Lutheran composers. And also, they still let all their priests become married, and so they'll get better men if you allow married men. You just have a much more giant selection pool of men, and they'll be there for the right reason, because they want to be there. They want to devote their life to it. Okay, here's sort of that painting from earlier, the vision of the Christian church by Caspar David Friedrich. And you don't even need church if you have your own relationship with God, with Christ, and through reading the Bible and studying the religion, And, church is just something if you enjoy it for the sake of community. And that's a whole other topic of debate. I've read a ton about the different churches, the different sects, and all this stuff. And like I said, I don't really care much about dogma. I like the Bishop Barron vision of enjoy the good, the beautiful things, the aesthetic Christianity, if you will. The literature, the painting, and all this other stuff. And as you look at it and spend time with it, you'll see how good it is. And you'll meet a lot of good Christian people. And as you're around them, you're like, well, gee, this is beautiful. And they're good. I like them. They're nice. And then you can start studying more of the dogmatic stuff if you want. But to just get into that dogmatic stuff, it's overrated and it confuses people initially on. I think the place to start is with all this stuff, okay? And like I said, this is what the poor man wants. The poor man wants religion. It is the rulers, the tyrants, the billionaires who don't want any of this stuff because it unifies the people. It makes them happy. It tells them their lives are meaningful and important. They have a right to have an opinion. They have a right to speak. Anyways, so I think that's all my slides for early Christianity. Yep. Okay, hope that was interesting.